Is for John Burrell,
Hang on.
please.
Yeah. Noted, Rosanna. Are there any other apologies
Thank
for
you.
absence?
Councillor Tom Oliver, please.
Councillor Emma Ben Musa, Councillor Laura Eady is subbing.
Okay. Is that all? Anything else? No? Good. Okay. Are there any declarations of interest? Not that I can see. Okay. In that case, we move on then to the confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of September 2020. The recommendation is that the minutes of the meeting be confirmed as an accurate record. Do I have approval for that? I have a proposer.
Approved, yeah.
Okay, I think that looks good to me. Fine. Urgent items, I don't believe there are any.
There are none, Chairman.
No. And then items for consideration in public: to receive the minutes of the Cabinet Advisory Panel held on the 26th of October 2020. Items to follow.
That's this evening's meeting, Chairman.
Yeah, good. And then references from committees, none. That moves us on then to items under the A heading: strategies, policies, key decisions and consultations. And the item is number 7, test and trace standard support payments and discretionary payments scheme policies. Who have we had for that?
I'll talk to that one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
So this is part of the government's COVID-19 response. They introduced a self-isolation payment scheme whereby any individual that's required to stay at home as a result of NHS test and trace, who's employed or self-employed, unable to work from home and will lose income as a result, and is also in receipt of one of a number of qualifying benefits, will be entitled to a one-off payment of £500. Local authorities are expected to administer the scheme, and alongside this, they're also requested to administer a discretionary scheme for those who meet the same criteria but aren't actually in receipt of one of the qualifying benefits. We're required to actually go live with our scheme by the 12th of October, so therefore today you're just being asked to vote the policies for both the standard scheme and the discretionary scheme. The government has said that they'll fully reimburse the council for any payments made under the standard scheme, but when it comes to the discretionary scheme, they've given us a set allocation. So therefore the report is actually asking that delegated authority be given to me in consultation with the leader of the council to amend the discretionary policy if required to make sure that we keep within our allocation. So that's all I really wanted to say, but I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
I can see Councillor Eady. Is there anyone else? Let's go with Councillor Eady first.
I think Kelly had a hand up before me, but I'm fine to go.
Okay, well, you want to go first and I'll have Kelly straight afterwards, okay? Is that right?
Yep, that's fine. Thank you, Sarah Martin, for the report there. I was just wondering, in terms of, obviously there's people who are on benefits are covered with a scheme and people who are employed, but what about people on 0-hour contracts? Because I didn't know if they fell into the matching criteria for either of those schemes.
Well, the criteria is very clear that the government gave us. So we would actually be expecting people to give proof of wages. So if they can do that, if they can prove that they have been in receipt of wages and they are suffering a financial loss, and that's one of the key criteria they would need to prove that they're actually suffering a loss as a result of having to self-isolate. So if they've been expected to work during that period and they could prove that, then they might qualify under the discretionary scheme. But they would need to prove that financial loss. That's quite one of the key criteria of the scheme.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, now we move on to Councillor Green.
Thank you. So the question that I have probably follows on from that quite nicely. I'm not clear how people apply for this if they don't have access to the internet. Ordinarily, obviously, we could send people to the library and other such places, but that's not really applying now. And it sounds quite onerous for anyone without a computer because of needing, bank statements and so forth. Is there a means to apply that isn't online?
Councillor Green, I think the last part of that sentence was inaudible. Can we have it again?
Yes, I'm trying to think what the last sentence I said was. Basically, I was just summarising, is there a way to apply for this that doesn't require online access?
If an applicant hasn't got online access, then they would be able to contact our benefits team and they would be able to help them through completing the application. But they would need to send in all the necessary proof that we would normally expect.
Okay, we've have David Moat, Councillor Moat. No, you're scratching his head. We do, however, have Councillor McLean furiously waving his hand at the camera, so we'll have him next.
Thank you, Sarah. Is there any restriction on what people are allowed to spend this on, or is this just generally hardship, paying bills and keeping themselves going, I suppose, if they're facing hardship as a result?
There aren't any restrictions as such, but I think that's why we do want proof that they're suffering financial loss. So we're making sure that we're only giving this to people who have got a genuine need, because we would be expecting it to go towards household bills, food, etc. But there isn't actually any evidence that they need to provide, but that's what they've spent the money on.
Okay. Is there anything else? Anything else from anyone here?
Councillor Sandu is indicating, Chairman.
Oh yes, Councillor Sandu.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for a lovely presentation on this effectively. I just wanted to check, now you say you need proof. The individuals that are working from home that are self-employed, what type of proof would they be able to give you apart from an invoice, an estimate that's already been prescribed for someone for a job? And then how do you verify that they've actually lost that job? Because somebody could be making up fake estimates, etc.
I mean, ideally, we would want to see some sort of accounts or some sort of proof of what they've been received, what they've been paid over the last few weeks, or what they've earned over the last 3 weeks from their self-employment. So we would expect to see bank statements or some sort of accounts or some evidence that they are getting some sort of income from their business.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have Councillor Davis.
Can you hear me now? Is that loud enough?
Yes.
Thank you. Apologies, I've dialed in via my mobile phone instead of via the laptop. So apologies. So thank you, Councillor Stringer. Shall I take over now?
Yeah, you can resume the chair if you like.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Is there anyone else on this item? Doesn't look like it. Okay. In that case, I'd like to thank Mrs. Martin for introducing it, and I'm sure Cabinet will take a note of the comments we've made. I believe the next item is the item 8 on the agenda, the white paper consultation from the Ministry of Housing. I don't know, Mr. Applin, whether you're introducing this item or not?
That's correct, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I hope everyone can hear loud and clear. This is a second consultation we have from the government, additional to one reported to last month's Cabinet. In terms of the background, this is a longer term set of proposals, structural changes about the system as a whole. The government really has set out that they view the planning system as too slow and complicated, out of date in certain respects, and delivering too few houses. So in the report, so there is an extensive discussion of the proposals, but to summarise, there is a table in relation to the pros and cons of some of the key aspects there, but there are a wide number of proposals put forward with varying levels of detail. But essentially, as it sets out in paragraph 4.1, what these proposals are all about is taking a view that the planning system is a local discretionary one, and trying to change that towards it being a more predictable one. So there's a range of proposals put forward to that end to have a more predictable system in terms of the outcomes of decisions on development. So in terms of decision making and the local plans, there are a number of implications for the council and how our role would change, and indeed for the public and consultation. But there are some aspects of continuity. Local plans would still be an important part of the system. It would still be a plan-led system in terms of how decisions are taken overall. But there are a number of changes, both in relation to development management and other aspects of planning decisions. In terms of the local plan, there is particular concern over a number of the changes there, adverse outcomes, aiming to speed up the process. The white paper clearly refers to the government's ambition to increase housing supply, and the proposal there to have binding housing targets. The other major aspect of proposals is a new system in relation to infrastructure funding. So, in conclusion, there are a number of issues arising from this, and we've outlined some of those problems. There is scope for streaming of certain aspects of the planning system, but we do put forward in our proposed response some recurrent concerns as the government tried to seek that extra predictability in the process and the issues arising from that with reduced local discretion in decision making. So that's a brief overview, but I'll be quite happy to pick up on any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Applin. I'd also like to thank you and your colleagues for completing the response to the consultation. It was a big piece of work and it's much appreciated. I note that the consultation closes, I believe, this Thursday, which is the date of the Cabinet. So will the response have to be submitted before Cabinet, or can it be submitted after Cabinet? How will that work, just from a technical point of view? Thank you.
Yes, that's correct. We have until 11:45 in the evening, I believe, to respond, so we could action Cabinet's decision immediately.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Oakley Dow. Thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully you can all hear me. Thank you, Chair. Well, members of the panel, officers of the council, you've answered my first question in terms of the technicalities of submitting this response. But I just want to say I'm really pleased to have this opportunity to voice broad support from myself and all the members of the Labour group for the formal response of the officers and the authority to this consultation. I can assure this panel and the wider public that I think I speak for the group and the many interested people and businesses of Dartford when I say that the documents presented here, and they are available for online public viewing, should there be anyone on YouTube watching us, the documents for consideration by Cabinet reflect very nearly all of our concerns as regards this proposed wide-ranging, far-reaching reorganisation of the nature of planning in England. And we think, You may disagree in the detail, but they actually represent an excellent cross-party riposte almost by our officers on behalf of all the council for a government proposal which would do very little, if anything at all, to improve future planning in Dartford. In its present form, I see proposals in a white paper that could at worst represent a huge retrograde step in the existing independent democratic planning processes, with little apparent thought for or attention paid to the realities of planning and building quality communities for all in Dartford. And as Mark's just said, it has as its ambition, base ambition, a purely numerical target, looking to double housing targets in Dartford to actually assuage national targets overall. And I think the recognition that this white paper won't in any way really support the quality supply of truly affordable homes within a range of varied tenure, including council homes, obviously. I think it's to be applauded. And I think I thank the officers on behalf of the Labour group for their excellent work. I mean, specifically Mark Applin as the report author, but the whole team involved in this formal response. And thank you. Thank you.
Noted, thank you. Is there anyone else? I need to switch between two screens, so bear with me. Councillor Moat, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Well, can I just agree entirely with Councillor Oakey-Dow? I find myself in a very strange position because for many years I worked with the housing industry, trying desperately hard to get the government to actually build or allow the building of new houses. But I have to say I'm a little bit concerned by this white paper. And I have to say that I'm extremely pleased with the response that the officers have put together. My great concern is that if you rush something through, that's when you make mistakes. And I do honestly believe that the whole question of trying to rush these things through, as they seem to be trying to do, won't work. And to be honest with you, the existing system that we have works extremely well. So yes, all I would like to say is that, yes, I think it is an excellent response. I congratulate the officers for going through this. It is a monstrous document size-wise to go through. It is all about speeding things up. Speed is not always the best way forward. So yeah, I would just like to say thank you very much for the officers for the work they've done. And I'm very pleased to see that there is a cross-party agreement with this one. So that's very good news indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Moat. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? It doesn't look like it. In which case, thank you very much, Mr. Applin. Appreciate that. We'll move on. Next item is item 9, the West Hill parking scheme. This has not been drawn down, and I'm aware of. Does anyone have any questions or comments on item 9 on the agenda? I can't see any. Okay, noted. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 10, which is the Swanscombe Peninsula item. I'm not sure who's introducing it. Mrs. Roscoe, is this for you to introduce, or Mr. Applin?
Right, Chairman. I'll be introducing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So the planning application for the London Resort, Leisure and Entertainment Complex is to be determined by the Secretary of State under what's known as the NSIP process, which is for Nationally Significant Infrastructure Projects. That means that the council will not be determining the application, but it has an important role in providing its views to the planning inspectorate. So the latest consultation that we're responding to is the 5th round of consultation, and that ended on 21st of September, and it's now being reported for information only, as the timetable didn't allow for it to be reported in advance. LRCH, the promoters of the scheme, London Resort Company Holdings, intend to submit the application to the Planning Inspectorate in December 2020, so about two months' time. This consultation, which was a public consultation with online events for the general public, as well as the many documents that were submitted for viewing, is a very important pre-application stage when the applicant should set out full information about the proposal and their impacts. It's the main opportunity for Dartford Council as one of the impacted local planning authorities, and in fact the authority where the resort will almost entirely fall within our area, to inform the future application and to suggest how any impacts might be mitigated. In paragraph 3.13 of the report, it sets out what the development will comprise. So just in summary, it will have a leisure core comprising event spaces, themed rides and attractions, theatres, cinemas, ancillary retail, dining and entertainment facilities. So a huge range of leisure facilities. It will have parking for up to 2,750 cars. That's just to put that in context. The peak day attendance is expected to be about 75,000 people. And it also provides for improvements on the A2 at the Ebbsfleet junction and at Bean, although it's envisaged that that won't go beyond the currently planned improvements being carried out by Highways England. And it's also proposed to have a resort access road of up to 4 lanes, that's 2 each way, which will take cars from the Ebbsfleet junction right through to the resort on a dedicated road. There will be 4 hotels providing up to 3,550 suites, of which one might be on the resort, within the resort itself. A combined conference and convention centre, which they call a convention centre, and a building hosting a range of esports, video and computer and gaming events. It will also have a full range of supporting facilities, back of house facilities, and up to 500 dwellings for resort workers. These is proposed. These will be arranged as 4 to 6 rooms or units within a dwelling, and they will probably operate as similar to a house in multiple occupation. The proposal now has added on to previous versions an area at Tilbury Port, and it's proposed to take materials, construction materials from the docks by boat, by river across to Swanscombe Peninsula, and also to provide parking facilities once the resort is open for visitors, who will then be again transported across the river to the Swanscombe Peninsula. So that will provide for a percentage or proportion of the trips. The Council's comments to the consultation and covering letter are set out at Appendix A. Our view is very much basically that it's not been possible to provide detailed comments on the benefits of the scheme, because nor about the negative impacts, because of the inadequacy of the assessments carried out so far, and really insufficient information provided about benefits the jobs, the skills package. In terms of the impacts, we don't have enough information to understand them and to therefore comment on what mitigations might be appropriate. For example, the transport modelling hasn't been carried out yet, or it hasn't been shared with us. So we're not able to understand what the impacts on the highway network will be. There's also no information. In fact, the North Kent Line, transport use of North Kent Line has been scoped out. So we don't know what the impact on that line will be in terms of the capacity and the ability for people to use those trains, and also about the actual capacity of the stations where they're getting on and off. In particular, there's no discussion about Swanston Station and how that could be improved, or what role it would play. It is assumed that Greenhithe Station will be the disembarkation point for travellers on the North Kent Line, and it's assumed that they will be taken from Greenhithe to the resort by fast track. But again, there's no, that's not spelt out in the documents, and it's unclear what the impact on Ingress Park would be if there was a convoy of buses at peak times going through the park, through the residential area. So so many unanswered questions so far. So whilst the resort has the potential to bring significant benefits to the borough through the employment, skills development and a boost to the local economy, it's not a foregone conclusion. The right measures need to be in place to enable this, and mitigations also need to be in place to act against the adverse negative impacts. So officers will carry on engaging with LRCH up to submission of the proposal, and we'll be scaling this up. And we'll try to improve the clarity of these matters. However, the proposed submission date of December 20 is not considered to give sufficient time to resolve all the matters. And in the letter, we do urge LRCH to delay the submission date. And this is something reiterated by other statutory public respondents as well, so that fuller engagement can take place. So that by the time the application is submitted, it is in a much there's a much better understanding of the impacts and mitigations, as is expected in the case of an NSIP. NSIPs are expected to be front-loaded with impacts and mitigations set out when the application is submitted, and without too much change to the proposal once it has gone in. So we do, as I said in the letter, we have urged LRCH, and verbally as well in meetings with them, we are urging them to delay this submission so that we can have this full discussion can take place, and we can try and get. Hello, still here, back. Yes, so we can get a better understanding and hopefully be able to give a more detailed response to the proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. Firstly, just to repeat that the council's response has already been submitted, so it cannot be changed at this stage. I'd like to thank planning officers, and I presume also the legal officers who have provided a very substantive response or document, and the issues that are unresolved are major issues. That they're not superficial issues. That there are major questions still unanswered, as I see it in the DCO. Mrs. Ruskosa, can I ask, is there any, as well as considering the planning aspects, does the Secretary of State consider the viability of the applicants in terms of financing and their experience in delivering large-scale infrastructure? Is that a consideration that the Secretary of State can make, or is it limited to the planning aspects? Thank you.
It doesn't cover the financial viability of the applicant. It is limited to the planning aspects, although it does also include compulsory purchase orders and other authorizations such as environmental health as well. But it doesn't go as far as testing the ability of the applicant to deliver the proposal.
Okay. And do the applicants have to pay a fee to the ministry as part of this process? No, as one would pay a planning application to the council if one was submitting an application. Thank you.
No, they don't pay a fee to the ministry and to the planning inspectorate, but as it's set out in the report, it is normal practice, and it's expected that the applicant will enter into a planning performance agreement with the local authority and provide funding assistance for the local authority, who will advise the planning inspectorate in essence as to the impact in the local area, because obviously the planning inspectorate don't understand the area as well as we do or have knowledge of it. So they are quite reliant on the local planning authorities and the statutory bodies to advise them on a range of matters. And once the application is submitted and it's been accepted by PINS that it can go forward, we do have lots and lots of questions put to us from the inspector, really trying to get an understanding from us about the impact of the development. So we are very much expected to provide that support for the planning inspectorate, and hence is why it is expected that the applicant would normally fund us in that work.
Thank you. Councillor Oakley-Dow, was there anyone out? If anyone else could re-indicate, please, so I can see Councillor Eady, and then just checking the other screen, Councillor Green. So Councillor Oakley-Dow first. Thank you.
Thank you again, Chair. It's going to sound quite familiar to my last little exposition. Bear with me. But the officers, I mean, notably, Teresa, thank you for your report, thorough report, and Sonia as the report author. But again, the whole team involved and the authority have answered nearly all the concerns of ourselves in the Labour group, and I think many of our colleagues across the council as regards this project, for which we thank them. A really well-researched, well-expressed, detailed piece of work. Again, online, available to view for the public on the DBC website. I won't go through the officer's report point by point, and really only time, changing national context and purely business-led decisions will tell as to whether this is a project whose time has passed long since, and whether it has a ghost of a chance of providing really any concrete advantage whatsoever for the people of the area, which I personally doubt, personal opinion, but the lack of consultation really informs the nature for me of this application for the development consent order. The lack of clarity as really well expressed by the officer's work, the lack of detail in the impact on the neighbouring communities, especially on ecology and biodiversity, landscape, retail and other existing businesses, human health, all forms of transport, archaeology, cultural heritage, noise pollution. I mean, it's a really long list, and it's a comprehensive, I think, critique of a really disappointing and inadequate process in this draft DCO application. I mean, and this is against the background of losing what is already and fast becoming a better known, nationally recognized ecological asset. 12,000 signatures on the Bug Life petition alone to halt this project. And we are talking about the only theme park in the history of the UK which has been given the status of a national infrastructure project, which is an illogical oddity to say the least. So thank you to the officers, thank you to the authority and everyone involved for the initial preliminary comments, such as they are. It's a most welcome and laudable piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you. Noted. Councillor Eadie.
Hi. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the report. As Councillor Oakley-Doe has mentioned, it was a very thorough response in terms of the short, medium, and long-term impact to the local community. I think I'd like to. I know that you can't add to it, but in terms of the environment, like Councillor Oakley-Doe has said, it's you've got a critically endangered spider who lives in this area, who is only in one other place in the whole of the UK. I know it's pretty scary looking, but it's such a important place for biodiversity, and it's one of, you know, it's, I think a lot of people across the UK would have real concerns with this area being built on without the right mitigating measures put in place. Also, it's a flood risk area, so there seems to be a lack of logic when it comes to building on a site like this. And of course, you have marshland actually is proven to absorb pollution. So not only will there be increased pollution with the extra traffic and building, but also you'll take away such an important area of land that does take pollution out of the air. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say on it. So thank you for the report, and let's hope we get some answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eadie. Then Councillor Green, and then I go to Councillor Moat. Thank you, Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reiterate what my colleagues have said about this being such a good report. I could probably talk to every point on this report, but I won't, because I have found very little in there that I can disagree with. It's an excellent report, and it's one that we can, as a council, I think, be very proud of. The thing that I think, well, one of the many things in there that I think is very worrying is the thought of 10,750 cars coming that could be parked in the car park. Of course, all those cars have got to drive through our roads to get there. And we all know the problems we have here. So if this infrastructure is not done correctly, you know, I dread to think what kind of situation we would be in. So I just want to sort of summarise and highlight the officer's response that we can only really understand the impact that this development will have on our area when the work is all done and done properly by the appropriate organisations, and indeed the company building the theme park. And I very much hope that they're going to engage better and really have a look at what our area is and what sort of things we need. And I'm hoping that we see better documents put forward, and we have we're able to have better input than we're having currently moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Councillor Moat.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm obviously very concerned about this because, of course, the resort actually will reside in my ward. It's quite correct that this whole exercise is front-loaded. It's going to be exceptionally important for the applicant to make sure that they've ticked all the boxes, dotted I's, crossed T's, in the very first few weeks of the whole NSIP sausage machine, because if they don't get past that, they won't get on at all. I am interested, obviously, and I did attend several of the consultation meetings, and I'm sure some of my colleagues here today also attended those meetings, because they were very good and they were very interesting. They obviously didn't allay all the doubts that we had, but I am quite concerned with if you look at the plans, they're not going to be concreting over the entire peninsula. they're concreting over a lump of the peninsula, which is already concreted over. I'm concerned that there's a lot of people wanting to put forward environmental benefits, which of course there are, and biodiversity is key to the maintenance of our whole society. But they're not going to be getting rid of all the marshlands. They're going to be actually looking at that and actually putting that into perspective. But I have to say that the actual report is exceptionally good. Thank you so much for doing that. My question, I guess, would be, are our friends at LRCH actually arranging to actually come back to you? Because one would assume that we've obviously put our points to them. They would, by rights, have a chance to come back to us and hopefully correct some of those issues.
Yes, Chair, would you like me to respond to that?
Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we have asked London Resort Company Holdings to respond to our our consultation response and to let us know if something is incorrect or if they are addressing it. So we are hoping to get a response from them on that. And beyond that, we are having ongoing discussions with them and workshops with their consultants on the various issues. So we certainly do hope to get more answers.
Councillor Moat, then Councillor Jones.
Yeah, sorry, just a supplementary question, really. You've said that you would like them to push back the actual placement of this particular NSIP into government. How long do you think it's going to take before we can actually get something together that is going to be a fully rounded application that they can actually place with PIMS?
Well, that's a question for them, really, and potentially for PIMS, depending on how much they can do, how quickly, and you know, whether they support us fully enough for us to be able to put the resources in, have the workshops with, well, they have 9 sets of consultants that are engaging with us. So you know, obviously it takes up a fair amount of our time. So I can't give you, I'm sorry, I can't give you a definitive answer of how long it would take. And it would also depend on, you know, how quickly they respond to our questions.
Okay. You would have thought they'd have had enough years by now to get all their information together. Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Thank you for that report. And Teresa, I was very pleased to hear that in your report that it had been spoken about the job situation and the fact that that's something that we are going to be pressing on. I think it's really important that if we're looking at a situation whereby, you know, there's going to be significant changes to the areas in Dartford and around Dartford that we live, that the government takes on board the situation with looking at local jobs for local people. And that being something that we're firmly onto them about going forward. So that's it for me, and thank you very much for that report.
Noted. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Hammock.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, Teresa, thank you very much for a very thorough report. But just one quick comment, it doesn't necessarily need a response from you. I'd like to echo your plea for more information, because I also went to some of their presentations and I queried the percentage figures they were using about rail, road, river, etc., etc. And we spoke about Greenhithe Station. And they made a comment similar to what you have said about Fast Track. The reality is, if their percentages are anywhere near what they project, you'd need a dedicated fleet of buses blocking up Ingris Park to get them all there. The Fast Track just would not cope. When I made that point to them, I just got a look and a smile and they moved to the next question. But thank you very much for the report.
Thank you, Councillor Hammock. Are there any other questions or comments? I can't see anyone. Oh, Councillor Story. Apologies. Good evening. I can't hear you, Councillor Story. Are you on mute?
Am I right now?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, can't see me. I'm just wondering, do we really need all these things, you know, taking up our countryside and that? Are you still hearing me?
Yeah.
Are
Yes.
you- I know it gives us work and jobs and that. And I always think, you know, our environment is very important to us. And especially as the traffic, extra traffic and things like that we're going to have on our roads. And I'm not sure. I think we need to go into this a lot more than we are. And you know, I'd like to see a lot more about it before I comment on this. Okay.
Okay.
So that's all I could say at the present moment. You know, I haven't seen any of the plans, unfortunately, but hearing from people's views about it. And things like that. And I'm feeling, are we just building this for building's sake? Do you get me?
Yeah, noted. Thank you.
Noted, okay. So I'd just like to know a little bit more about this before I would comment on it. But it seems a lot of disruption for this. And I know it's a big thing. And it'll probably bring a lot of people into the area and that. But, you know, the environment is an important thing, especially down by the marshes there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Turn off.
Is anyone else? Okay, and in that case, I'd just like to emphasise one thing that struck me from the report, which was that it stated that there will be a significant loss of biodiversity within the site, which I thought was quite stark. Thank you very much, Mrs. Ryskowska and Mr. Applin. Please feel free to leave the call at this time. I don't believe you're on any further reports. So thank you very much for taking the time to attend. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We shall move on. The next item is the discretionary assistance policy, item 11 on the agenda. Is there anyone that has any questions or comments? Presumably Mr. Dosad, who is either in the office or has replicated the office in his decor at home. I've got a question, but I'm happy for if anyone else wishes to go first. I can't, let me just check the other screen. Can't see anyone indicating. My question, Mr. Dosad, is if someone is not elderly and does not have an underlying medical condition, but perhaps there are young children, babies, how would that be dealt with? I think from my previous experience, it's fairly lenient in the application. But if there was a requirement for a family that had young children, would that be covered by the policy? Thank you.
Absolutely, Chairman. I think the report, we're in an unusual situation of having money to spend and no ability to spend it, and I think this report kind of reflects that, and hopefully gives us the ability to do exactly what you've said, be as wide ranging, as helpful as you possibly can. I mean, ultimately, the people that approach us for such assistance are vulnerable, so it's quite an easy decision to have a very, basic check around, medical conditions, but it would cover anybody in the family, in answer to your question.
Okay, thank you. So apologies. Was there anything else in the report that you particularly wanted to highlight to us? Those apologies. I should have asked you that sooner. And then I think Councillor Oakley-Dale wishes to speak. Thank you.
Not really. I think it's the only significant difference from it's kind of emanated out of the Better Care Fund assistance policy that we developed a couple of years ago, which was quite restrictive. But we've found new clients that are seeking assistance. I think that this is a really valuable tool for us to help those people that desperately need to stay or return to their homes. Tenants are dealt with separately, as you know, under the HRA funding arrangements. But it's around the fact that the grant isn't repayable any longer. The reality situation is the report sets out that even those that didn't meet the very high criteria previously never got any money back because it was only on sale of the property, and it doesn't happen very often, as you would appreciate. So I think this is a real positive, but that's the real difference in terms of the non-repayable element of the grant, and we just wanted to make sure members were aware of that.
Yes, it's a very positive report. It's good news story, I believe, and it is incumbent upon all of us as councillors to be aware of the policy and to bear it in mind when we are dealing with our residents. Councillor Oakley-Dow, did you wish to speak?
Yes, please. It's rather occurred to me whilst I'm listening to Peter talking, but it's not anecdotal. It's actually very specific to my ward in that 3 particular residents have made me aware that in the present circumstances, social circumstances of charitable fundraising becoming far more difficult, specifically, I mean, without giving too much identifying detail, stroke support charities and brain injury support charities are actually now physically, contemporaneously withdrawing a lot of their funding from some brain injury and stroke victims that they had hitherto been in a position to provide funding for. And whilst it's, I suppose it could be decreed a COVID-related loss of funding and almost a COVID-related hardship, that having been previously assessed by a specific charity for your specific disability or hardship or need for assistance, would this be in some way covered by the discretionary assistance policy on some level? That's my question. Does that make sense?
It does. Sorry, Chairman. Sorry.
Yeah, no, please go ahead.
These are more around physical measures, usually. Assistance in a physical way, access, adaptation, that kind of thing. It wouldn't necessarily, if you're talking about, I guess, I don't know, assistance, supporting a kind of counselling, physical needs, that kind of thing. It's not where the grant would go. This is more around the physical adaptation, making your life more easy from a physical perspective. So because it's not something that as a statutory function, as a housing thing that we'd have to provide. So it would be kind of more for top tier stuff for KTC to provide, because we don't provide support in that sense, councillor, as a housing thing.
Thank you. That's clear. It obviously requires further investigation on my part. Thank you, though. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Councillor McLean? Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Chairman. I just a comment really around what this is about, and having an elderly grandparent at the moment who, we're struggling with. Do we, initially we were struggling with her. Do we put her into nursing accommodation, or do we try and keep her at home? And this is exactly the type of scheme that allows people to maintain their independence. Far too many times you see people going into homes perhaps too early, when they can actually, with a few adaptations at home, can really continue to strive. So I just wanted to endorse that really, and seeing, looking through the report, seeing that and the recommendations, the increases that we intend to give as well, which will really help people, help those families that will struggle to pay for care homes, and it'll help people keep their dignity. I think that's something we should be proud of here. Thank you.
Noted, thank you. Is there anyone else on this item? I can't see anyone else indicating. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item, which has not been specifically called down as far as where the low emissions strategy. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the low emission strategy? I can't see any. I would myself just like to ask if the brochure should have an EU logo on the back of it still. I don't know if that's a hangover. Perhaps the Cabinet could consider that. Thank you. So we move on to the B and C items, of which a couple have been called down. Item 13, the Environmental Health Service partnership with Severn Oaks has not been called down, so we will note that. And we'll move on to item 14, which is the management of the garage portfolio, which is not urban music style, it's physical garages. I believe this has been called down. Mr. Dosad, first, is there anything specifically you'd like to mention? I hope everyone's read the report, but if you do, please do so.
Not really, Chairman. I think the report is self-explanatory. I think the only thing I would add is that any members that have a garage within their walls will probably be aware of some of the issues that the report raises and the difficulties that we've had coming up with a real solution, which is becoming an increasing problem from a management perspective. And the other thing I would say is not to remember this doesn't affect the actual ownership of the garages. That's 100% retained by the council.
Okay, thank you. Is there a standard size of the garage, or are they all different sizes?
Unfortunately, small is the answer, I think. They are fairly standard because they were all pretty much built at the same time. They're all in the main state areas, as you're aware, and you can't get much more than a standard compact vehicle in there. You'd struggle to get an estate or anything bigger in them.
SUV.
Yeah, no chance.
Okay.
No chance.
Does anyone have any questions or comments on this item? Let me just check. Councillor Hammack. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, Peter. Just a quick query. If indeed this is approved and goes ahead, the outsourcing of the management, will it be a clean sheet start? Because I know your department has had various plans and indications of what they'd like to do with some of the sites. So just to find out, are you going to continue with your plans, or will they have a new clean sheet?
I think, if I'm honest, Councillor, it would be a bit of both. We have certainly analysed the garage stock historically to look at opportunities in terms of redevelopment. What we haven't been able to pursue as much as we'd like to is different uses for car parking areas, but retaining them as car parking areas. For example, open parking, more security, more lighting, something that's a better product. And I think what we'll do initially with whoever, if we are successful in the tender and we get a contractor that's interested in doing the work, is that we'll do a review of all the sites. And I've talked about coming back to you with a report later on in probably late this financial year, and that may pick up some of those issues. The reality of the situation is that the garage sites are extremely difficult to do anything other than provide parking on currently for any number of reasons. But effectively, we will hand over the advertising, the management, the day-to-day, the income collection to a contractor. We will remain oversight and obviously keep an operational view of their operations. But effectively, we will look at every site on its merits. But I can't imagine that their use will differ greatly from what's currently provided just because of the nature of each site.
Thank you. Sorry, just trying to read a chat. Oh, thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak or ask a question on this item? I can't. Oh, Councillor Green. Thank you.
Apologies, my mouse got stuck. Yeah, just an observation really. Garages are really in demand throughout the borough for, not really for car storage, but for other storage. So, and I know a lot of charities are looking for storage space at the moment for kind of goods that are being received in donations. So I think the garage stock is potentially a big earner, and I think actually it could be an asset to the community, not for cars, as I say, but for other things. So I would like to see it utilised.
Noted. Thank you. Is there anyone else on this item? I think Councillor Jones has had to leave the call. I can't see anyone else. In which case, thank you very much, Mr. Dosad. I don't think you have any other items. Again, don't feel that you have to remain for the rest of the call. Thanks for joining us this evening. Enjoy the rest of it. Thank you very much. Moving on. Only one further item has been called down, which is item 15, which is the capital programme. I don't know whether, Mr. Sams, you wish to introduce this or just take questions. It's up to you. Thank you.
I can
And welcome.
say
Thank you for joining.
Sorry. Yes, I can say a few words, but there's not to say. It's mainly as read. It's just worth noting that obviously this report of capital monitoring takes account of a wide range of different projects, and so depending on the questions in relation to the drawdown, which I haven't got any specific details of, we may need to come back with you to you with more details depending on those questions.
Councillor Gaskin, good evening.
Good evening. Chair, I would actually like some more clarification of the estimated overspend on Acacia Hall, which is quite sizable. It's £900,000, which is nearly £1 million. So I'm not quite sure whether this is in addition, is it on top of the agreed budget? Because what's confused me a little is that the current budget and the new budget remain the same. So is the overspend something that the money has to be found? I just like some more explanation. What is the overspend about? Is it going to be absorbed within the budget? What is it?
Yes, I understand the confusion there. I think there is an error in Appendix B in that the 900 in the environment column needs to then add to the total budget. So the total budget does need to go up by £900,000 as per the wording of the report. So, and that's what we'll be asking Cabinet for alignment between that project and another project that's not planning to spend this year.
So then you're taking further on from here. Yes, this is, I mean, just doing mental math, this is about 20.5% increase in the original budget. And was the money that perhaps, well, I expected would have been some contingency in the original budget. So was the contingency not enough? Is there any set limit how much, you know, further increase? Are there going to be any further increases of the budget? Because, you know, I'm a bit concerned that we could end up with our own version of HS2 if we are not very careful. So could we have some more explanation on possible limits?
Thank you.
Mr. Sams?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, my understanding is that these current figures are based upon the project manager's current assessment. The project's really moved on quite a lot in the last few months, so I'm more optimistic that these figures are likely to be nearer to the end point and not increased at all. So that's where we are at the moment, but the project does continue. The complication with a project of this nature is as they open up the ground, then some of the original estimates, and like you said, there would have been some contingencies, but some of the original anticipated works that they expected have then changed. So, for instance, there's the bridge strengthening works that is mentioned. So there's various items that are mentioned individually, and though the real cost of those items only become apparent when the works commence and underground structures are opened and observed. So that's part of the challenge with this complex project, and particularly complicated project due to the nature of the river running through that site.
A river runs through it, that is the project name. There are significant underspends on many other projects elsewhere in the report. Councillor Oakley-Dow, and then Councillor McLean. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks, Tim. I know myself and Kelly have been trying to get in touch with you today, but tomorrow, so excuse me if I'm asked, if done privately on the telephone otherwise. It's just a quick check. I mean, in my naive approach, I see that environment is from the leisure and open spaces capital budget of very nearly £1 million. Can we be assured that this isn't threatening any of the much looked forward to and much needed improvements in the existing spaces that we have in Central Park, and more specifically for myself and Councillor Eadie, Hesketh Park? This isn't putting any other projects under threat by transfer or environment of these funds?
Mr. Sams, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as said in the report, the plan is to via that money this year, because that project's not going to spend this year. There's a separate comment on that project this year. So we've got the total capital budget that's approved by GAC, and the council needs to manage within those limits. So we can move money between projects. So that's what's proposed here. But the proposal will be to give the full budget back next year, in next year's budget, to make proposals to GAC to fund that project in its entirety as it currently stands.
Thank you, that's clear. Thanks very much.
Okay. And then Councillor Gaskin.
Thank you. I suppose really I just want to say to people that it's not uncommon when you're doing a capital project like this for things to come up, as Tim has already said. If you remember when we did Fairfield, when we started taking down Fairfield, we started realising there was a lot more work needed to be done beforehand. And I think, you always try and budget for these things, but not everything can be foreseen until you start stripping stuff out. That's just the very nature of doing a major capital programme. And I just want to pick up also on the points that have already been made around moving money around. So capital budget for the year is set for projects, and then obviously we've got a new year in the new budget moving forward. So I think everybody would agree that Acacia Hall is a worthwhile project, investing in an asset that we've got, taking into consideration all the other work that we're doing in the town centre. So but it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon when particularly when you're dealing with old buildings, to find that there's stuff that you didn't account for in the first place. So I just wanted to remind people of that, remind colleagues of that, and just remind them of Fairfield. And everybody worried that we were going to overspend on that, and in the end, actually, I think we got a very good facility for a very good price in the end. So we've got some really good officers who are adept at achieving value for money on major capital programs for us. So it's worrying, and it's good actually when we get these reports that they're upfront and honest, because actually they could have probably covered that up a little bit and made it sound a little bit better than what it was. But they're being upfront and honest with us. This is what this current situation is, but I'm sure we'll have every confidence, how they performed before, every confidence in bringing us much closer on budget as the project progresses.
Thank you. Councillor Gaskin, then Councillor Story.
Yes, well, can I just, well, I do appreciate that every capital project has got overspend. It's the nature of projects. I've got experience of running capital projects. However, it's the concern is the size of the overspend and the possible future overspend. So this is what I'd like to have more of understanding, you know, possible, at what point do we say maybe we need to look at it more carefully. Now, there's one more question. The delays resulting from COVID actually totaled, well, £250,000 in cost. Could we have more of explanation? What were those delays related to COVID? Specifically, what are actual specific things that, because the COVID is going to continue for the foreseeable future, so this may keep on adding. So what are the actual precise items that the COVID made more expensive in this project?
Are you able to answer that, Ms. Sams? I presume you have to continue paying for hired plant, etc., even if it's not being used. Thank you.
Yes, I can at that broad level, and the broad level is that my understanding during the lockdown period, the site was still there, and although it wasn't running at its, you know, it wasn't running during some of that period at least, but that the plant and the security and the like still needed to be paid for. So that's my basic understanding of that.
Thank you. Finally, Councillor Currans, Your Worship. Sorry. Did I already? Sorry, was Councillor Story? Wait, sorry, were you waiting to speak, Councillor Story? Apologies. I can't remember. Apologies, Councillor Currans.
Okay.
Yes, Acacia Hall
Sorry.
is Acacia Hall is a beautiful building and an asset to Dartford, and I think the money spent on that will be worth it in the long run. I really do think we need some of these things to portray Dartford, and not all just modern stuff. It'd be a shame to not spend money on it, and I think you would lose something really valuable to Dartford if we didn't. So no, I'm all for doing what we need done on Acacia Hall, and I'm sure it'll be worthwhile in the run.
Thank you.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Currans. Thank you. I can't hear you, Councillor Currans.
Sorry. Going
I can
back
hear you now.
over the reasons why COVID has caused such a problem, what you have to understand, when they were working down in the town in Market Street, they weren't allowed to work any closer than 2 meters when it started, which if you are laying marble slabs, you've got to be closer than that. There's also the problem with actually getting in any of the items that you require, because there's so many people who have been off, whether they've been self-isolating or actually having COVID, and things have had to move around. People, as you know, the officers in the Civic Centre have done so much good work other than what they're actually there to do, to try and keep any problems to an absolute minimum. And I think this has also got something why the budget was overstretched. But as has been said, they normally manage to pull it back, and I'm sure they'll do everything in their powers to do that. Thank you.
That's a good point, and hopefully Cabinet will note. Thank you very much, Mr. Sams. The final 3 items have not been called down, so therefore will be noted. The minutes of this meeting will be provided to the Cabinet for their meeting this Thursday. I'd like to thank councillors for attending and participating, and to all of the officers who have supported the meeting this evening. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the evening, everyone. Good to see you all. And apologies again for the technical issue at the start. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, everyone.